Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I'm sitting down with Rich Davis to talk about his newest comic, Reign of Dracula. How you doing, Rich?
Man, I'm doing better than I deserve. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Thanks again for coming on. This should be really cool. Before we get to Reign of Dracula, I always like to ask creative people if they can go all the way back to the beginning and like what got you into comics.
Yeah, so when I was a kid, my parents actually kind of tricked me. I didn't like comics as a kid. I didn't like to read, period. All I wanted to do was play video games and play baseball. I was convinced I was going to play baseball for the Atlanta Braves. I even picked out the house I was going to buy for my mom.
Nice.
So mom, being the ever innovative person that she was, she decided to start rewarding me if I did all my chores, or if I did well in school or played well in a baseball game. She would let me go over to Bob's Collector's Den in Cookeville, Tennessee. It was about 2 towns over from where I grew up. And she'd take me on a Saturday and I could shop for comic books. And so little kid me didn't realize that comic books were reading. And so I really enjoyed them. And that set me on a lifelong love affair with reading. I absolutely love to read. I read every day. I still, I'm one of those people, I still read a newspaper every morning. So
That's rare.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's hard to find a newspaper. If you I mean, really and truly, it's like you can't find them anywhere. So it's a trip there. So yeah, just grew into loving comics, and now thankfully I'm fortunate enough to be able to write them.
Really cool. Was it always horror that you drew?
Early on, I think like most people, superheroes drew me in because back then there really weren't a lot of well-known genre books out there. They were really, really on the fringes.
Yeah.
So, Amazing Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, a little bit of Batman, hated Wolverine. And those really drew me in. And then, as I matured, I kind of noticed that superhero comics are essentially the same 12 or 13 stories, just recycled with different costumes. So I got kind of bored and started looking for more. And that's when I found out all the genre comics were out there. I started reading horror, a lot of Vertigo books. Neil Gaiman's Sandman was a huge influence on me. As far as, my writing, it's pretty much always been horror. That's just a genre that resonates with me. Even as a little kid, I was watching horror movies. My parents never censored anything that I wanted to watch, anything I wanted to read, any video game I wanted to play. I wasn't prohibited from doing anything, but my parents always talked to me about it. They communicated with me, to find out if I was understanding what I was watching or what I was playing. And horror has always been my bag. So I'm, again, very fortunate that I get to tell scary stories for a living.
That's really cool, your parents' approach, because I feel like, I'm not a parent, but I feel like that's a really smart way to handle it, because if they say, oh, no, that game's off limits, you're not touching that one, all you're going to do is play that game every time their back is turned.
Yep, that's exactly what happens. My mom and dad were very, very creative in the way that they raised me. I never had a curfew. My mom and dad, we never had an argument about me being home before curfew. And mom was very smart about that. See, it sounds like, oh, wow, I'm going to stay up till 3, 4 in the morning. Well, all of my friends had to be home at like 10, 11 o'clock. So what am I going to do? Just sit out there by myself? No, I'm going to come home. So I was always home early.
You had their curfews, you just didn't know it.
Exactly. So mom and I, and dad, we never had a fight about curfew. So they were, on the outside, some people might think that that's a little overly permissive, but really it was ingenious, and it got me to kind of be good without ever having the argument about being bad, I guess.
Yeah. You didn't have to rebel because you didn't feel constrained.
Exactly. Nothing to rebel against.
Yeah, exactly.
Rebellion was probably coming home early.
You're home at 6 and they're like, get out of here.
Yeah, like, no. Fight the power.
That's really cool. I like your intro to comics, really kind of tricked you into it with reading. I'm sure a lot of people have that same kind of story where I hated books, so I got comics. And
yeah, exactly. And it's nice how one leads to the other. And there were studies I read a few years ago that kids who read comic books perform an average of 100 points higher on their SATs than kids who don't. So, comic books introduce you to larger vocabulary words. They introduce you to the pictures help you learn to retain what you've read. So, I think comic books are great for kids of all ages, but especially for kids who are really learning to read. And, like I said, it set me on a path of being a voracious reader.
Yeah, that makes sense. The SAT stat, because it's also like, you are filling in the spaces between the panels with what's going on in your mind. So you're doing the critical thinking, you're getting the story, you're putting it together.
Yep, absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yep, they should teach more comic books in schools.
For sure, yeah. So when you started your comic journey, was it like you were just drawing in notebooks or something on your own, doing it with friends, or did you go like, I'm going to be a pro at this, all in?
I think I did everything in my life, but write comic books. I've worked in radio, I've worked in television, newspapers, film. I owned a theater, I owned a bar, I own a comic book store now. I worked on 2 presidential and 1 senatorial campaign. And then I got into writing comics. So I did discover at an early age that I am a god-awful artist. I can't even draw good stick figures. There's actually a picture out there of something I had to send to Lucio Perillo when he was working on a cover for me. He was asking me to, he's like, well, I was trying to explain it to him and he wasn't getting, language barrier or whatever. And he said, well, can you just draw it out? And my heart just sank.
No, I can't.
I'm going to draw this for one of the greatest comic book artists working right now. So I sent him this little ugly stick figure drawing of the person on like a morgue slab and like all these different characters around her. And I was like, I just sent this to Lucio Perillo. And of course I put it up on Instagram because I have to be, self-deprecating.
You got to own it.
Exactly. It's like, and then I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I got to send this to Lucio Perillo. How many people out there get to say that Lucio Perillo is now laughing at my god-awful art?
Maybe he gives you a discount. He's like, you need me.
Yeah, he's like, you need me, bro. There were no discounts. I wish there were.
Yeah. So you stuck with the writing side. That makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, I paint with words. That's what I tell people. It's often the case with writers. We want to draw. We want to be able to create that art, but we're not able, a lot of us. There's very few of us out there who are just those ridiculous jack of all trades that can do it all. And we hate those people. We hate them because they're better than us. But a lot of writers can't draw, but a lot of artists can't write. And something I've learned over the years is a good artist, good art in a comic will draw the readers in for the first issue, but a good story is what keeps them there. Mm-hmm. Art can only carry you so far in keeping a reader's engagement, and writing can only do so much to catch their attention. So in comic books, the writer and the artist, for different reasons, are equally important. And thankfully, I'm a decent writer. I can put a story together and I can write some somewhat believable dialogue. So, and I get to work with some great artists. I'm working with Les Lindon Garner right now on Reign of Dracula, worked with Jordan Dorenzo on Prometheus and Chains, which issue 4 of Prometheus and Chains comes out this week in comic book stores everywhere. Puis Calzada and Henry Martinez, I worked with them on Cult of Dracula and Rise of Dracula. And then all the really cool cover artists I've worked with: Shannon Mayer, Carla Cohen, Lucio Perillo, Sarah Frazetta, Kayla Valero. I mean, I've gotten the chance to work with some really, really cool artists, Marat Michaels. So yeah, just because I can't scribble stick figures doesn't mean I don't get to find people who do.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. And this might just be making myself feel better because I'm in the same boat as you.
Right.
But I also find you do the writing, you hand it over to one of these great artists you find, and then when you get the page back, it's everything you wanted and more. And they added these touches that you never would think to write down. You're like, this just really fills it out.
Absolutely. And when you get when you form a really good relationship with your writer and your artist, it makes everything so much better. I have a great rapport with Les. We talk every day, not only just about comics, but we sit around and shoot the shit. And so Les knows what's going on in my head and knows how to find the things that I'm not expressing in words, but that I really want. Jordan Dorenzo was much the same. Jordan was very fond of going off script and just like, no, Rich, this is better. And, his page, and he was right most of the time, because I tell people going in, I'm crap with page layouts, panels. If it were up to me, it would be Watchmen style. Every page would be 5 rectangles stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
I have very little imagination when it comes to laying out the panels. But Jordan was great in Prometheus and Chains. His art really and truly elevated the book. But he wouldn't have been able to go off that script that way if he and I didn't have that relationship. We're working in sync, working in concert. It's we complemented each other because we knew each other so well.
Nice. That's awesome. It's awesome when it works out that way.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned a couple times now, Cult of Dracula. Was that your first comic to really hit?
Yeah, Cult of Dracula was actually my first comic ever.
Oh, awesome. So you hit it right out of the gate. That's great.
Yeah. My background was in theater and film. I was a playwright and a screenwriter. Did a lot of script doctoring work.
So you got story down.
Exactly, yeah. And so people would come to me if they had a problem with their script, I would help them work it out. And so it seemed pretty natural to kind of shift over into writing comic books because comic books and screenplays have a lot in common. A comic script is more similar to a screenplay than it is a prose novel. It requires a completely different skill set. And I tried to write novels, short stories, things like that. And it just, I don't know, the format, it felt too constraining to me. So yeah, I shifted into comic books. Cult of Dracula came straight out of the gate. It was a top 50 best-selling comic of 2021. Not a best-selling horror comic, not a best-selling independent comic, but a best-selling comic book of 2021.
That's amazing.
It was incredible, man. I don't know how I caught that lightning in the bottle, but I'm very happy that I did because it propelled me into a career where I get to do this for a living. So, Cult of Dracula is followed by Rise of Dracula, then Prometheus and Chains. Now Reign of Dracula is up on Kickstarter. I've got a book called Dorian in development. It'll be out sometime next year. I've got a book called Hide that's also coming out next year. So yeah, Cult of Dracula was kind of the genesis of everything. I still love the story. There are things I'd love to go back and kind of tweak a little bit.
Always.
Yeah, there always are. Hindsight's 2020, but you can't do that. You'll never move forward if you're looking backward. Right. So yeah, Cult, the log line really sold it. It's Bram Stoker's Dracula reimagined inside of a Manson family inspired cult dedicated to an ancient blood goddess. How can you not want to read that?
Yeah.
And thankfully, a lot of people did. I mean, it sold all 6 issues of Cult of Dracula sold just shy of 200,000 units, which is incredible. Yeah, it's incredible from an indie comic. I mean, hell, it's better than a lot of Marvel and DC books. Yeah,
I was going to say it's incredible for any comic in an industry that's having a really hard time keeping people looking at pages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's the industry's in flux right now. It's changing, some ways for the better, some ways for the worse. And I really do. I think we are at a crisis inflection point in the comic book industry, and things are gonna have to change, or comic books may not exist. I mean, and I want them to continue to exist because I want to keep doing this for a living.
Yeah, for sure. I'd be shocked if they went away entirely, where it's going to be more of like a boutique collector's thing, but that's not going to. That doesn't help your bottom line.
No, not at all. And, I see there's 2 ways there's really two ways the industry can go. Either everything gets swallowed up by the big two, and that means everything produced is going to be made by a corporate multinational entity that's only interested in protecting their IP. So that means everything that comes out is going to have Bat Dude and Spider Guy in it, and it's going to be the same stagnant stories recycled over and over again.
Yeah.
Because
sanitized and
it's safe. Yeah, exactly. It's going to hit the largest possible audience. It's going to protect the intellectual property and allow them to make more movies and more TV shows. And everything else, the independent creators, the independent companies, they're going to die out and be swallowed up. So that's one direction it could go. The other direction is the industry can take note of what people are actually buying and do things. And it's manga right now. It's anime and manga. That's
true.
It's no longer the future. It's the now.
Yeah.
And it will be the total future if the industry doesn't change. And manga and anime, I think their biggest strength is they focus on telling good stories, and they allow their characters to grow, develop, and die. American comic books, we don't do that. It's all about protecting the IP. It's all about relaunching and relaunching and relaunching and relaunching and relaunching. See, I'm bored just saying it. How bored are the readers that are having to do it? So if we were to follow suit and make changes to the industry, which is really just go back to the way it was, in the 80s and the 70s backwood. That's really when I consider it the heyday of great storytelling in comic books, because we were getting all these unique stories, all these new characters. We were pushing boundaries. People like Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman, they're challenging our expectations of what a comic book, Frank Miller, what a comic book could be, how to tell these stories. And, now we've kind of stagnated. So if we adapt and go back to our roots and see, pick up some things, what manga is doing, the comics, we could enter a new golden age. There's potential to do that especially with all the indie creators and genre creators out there. The genre books, the indie books, that's where the heart of comics and the really good stories are.
For sure. Yeah. It's exactly what you were saying, where an indie creator wants to tell a story from their unique perspective. They're not trying to retell Superman with a different color costume on. Mm-hmm. And they're also going to take a chance. If someone has an 8-issue run in mind, they could blow up the world at the end of the 8 issues because they're not worried about what Warner Brothers is going to do next year.
Exactly. It's, when you got nothing to lose, you're free to do anything.
Yeah.
And, indie comic creators, we've really got nothing to lose. I mean, I could do, and I did anything I wanted with Cult of Dracula, because what would I lose if it flopped? Just my time,
Yeah.
There's the risk taking, the indie creators, the small press publishers. I think they're really driving, they're what keeps people coming back to comic book stores. And I think they just pick up the big two because they're supposed to.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are still good stories going in those. I'm sure there's an interesting Spider-Man arc I'm unaware of or something like that.
Right.
But I do agree with you fully that, I mean, even look at Kickstarter. People go to Kickstarter to find comics to back so that they can have something original.
Right. Yeah, so they can get what they want.
Yeah.
You're not finding that in the comic book industry as it is today. And, I don't want to sound like all doom and gloom there, but like I said, we're at an inflection point, a nexus point, if you will. And things are either going to change or they're not. And comics are either going to survive or they don't.
Mm-hmm. There is some opportunity with that, though, for books like yours.
Yep. Blood in the street, spend money.
Yeah.
JP Morgan.
So you did Cult first, and you've mentioned Rise. I'm guessing direct sequel.
It is. So this was always imagined. My World of Dracula was always imagined as a 3-volume trilogy. And what I like to tell people is, if Cult of Dracula were a Tobe Hooper, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Southern Gothic film, Rise of Dracula is a John Carpenter near future dystopia, and Reign of Dracula is a full-on George Miller Mad Max, the world is fucked apocalypse. And the story evolves throughout those things. The characters, they grow. The people we meet in Cult of Dracula, they become part of a movement in Rise of Dracula, where vampires take over Washington, D.C. with the goal of saving the world by reducing humanity's population down to a manageable number. So we have the characters that were a tight-knit group in Cult of Dracula. They've kind of splintered in Rise. Some of them fall in line with the vampires. Some of them just can't stomach it, and they lead a human resistance. That's particularly Jonathan Harker and Arthur Holmwood. And then by Reign of Dracula, that movement has literally taken over the world, and we're falling into an apocalypse. And not just a Judeo-Christian idea of an apocalypse. Ragnarok, the Hindu version of the end of the world, Mayans, Egyptians, all of these end of the world myths, we get to tie them in, because I think what's made my Dracula series unique is that it doesn't draw exclusively on Western concepts of the vampire. I researched vampire myths from many, many, many cultures, and I pulled them in to weave this story. And so the finale is going to bring all of that that multiculturalism. It's going to bring it all in there in a very exciting and very, very, very bloody way.
That also makes a lot of sense just logically, because if you have near eternal beings, they're immortal unless you kill them. Mm-hmm. They would have been around, or knew someone who was around for thousands of years, where America's brand new in their eyes. Exactly. So.
Yeah, and every culture has a vampire myth. In my research, one of the things I discovered is that our Western culture is one of the very few that has male vampires. In most cultures, vampires are women. It goes all the way back to the myth of the succubus. So I used that to make my Dracula, again, unique. One of the things I knew I didn't want to do when I started this was tell another story set in Victorian London about a pasty white dude from Eastern Europe coming in and buying up all the real estate. That story's been done so many times and so well. There's nothing I can add to it. Nobody needs my version of that story. Nobody needs another version of that story, period, but they're going to keep making them. So I wanted to kind of flip it on its end and still remain true to Stoker's intentions, still play with his themes, but do it in a completely unique way. So taking into consideration that most cultures don't have male vampires, it made a whole lot of sense for my Dracula to be a woman. And because I wanted to draw in all these cultures, Dracula became a title, like a king, a queen, an empress, rather than a person. So when you accept that as your base principle, there's literally no story you can't tell, because every culture has a story about a dark, outcast, scary figure that lurks in the shadows. And we tell children, you better behave or La Llorona is going to come steal you away. So every culture has those stories. So once you accept that Dracula is all of those figures, just interpreted differently by the people and the cultures who observed her, there's literally no end to the amount of unique stories you can tell.
That also ties it more to history too, making it a title, Absolutely. Which is awesome. Mm-hmm. That's a really cool take on it, and I like that vampires are becoming scary again.
Yeah. Oh yeah. These are there's no real. I don't really play with the whole sex appeal of vampires. I mean, you have the brides, and in Stoker's story, their purpose was to raise a commentary about Victorian ideas toward sex and sexuality. So the brides, they're sexy. They fulfill that original intended role. But we don't really get into the Twilight Interview with the Vampire style. I love Anne Rice. Anne Rice is one of my favorite authors. I've read Interview with the Vampire probably more than I've read any other book, and Memnoch the Devil probably follows closely behind that. But I don't really go into her idea of the romanticized vampire. My vampires are more power driven.
They're monsters.
They're monsters, yeah, and but they're not black and white evil either. There's a lot of gray. I don't believe the world is black and white, good or evil. It's just lots and lots and lots of shades of gray. Mm-hmm. So in Rise of Dracula issue 3, for example, I don't pick sides. I don't tell you who the good guys are. So in that issue, Lucy Westerna, who's now become a Dracula, she's delivering her first basically inaugural address as she becomes Dracula. And this is after they've seized Washington, D.C. And she delivers a speech that I've received hate mail from both the left and the right side of the political spectrum, because there is a way that you can read her monologue there. You can read it as hardcore socialist, communist, leftist, extremist. And there is a way that you can read the exact same speech as hardcore MAGA conservative. Both are right, both are wrong. It's just your perspective and your point of view, which is a common theme that we play with through all 3 issues. Renfield in Cult of Dracula, he lays it out. Where you are when you see something is just as important as what you see. Mm-hmm. Everything's perspective and point of view. So that's a common theme that you'll see throughout all 3 volumes of this World of Dracula series.
Those letters are a massive compliment, because that means you nailed it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know you're doing it right if you've pissed off both sides.
Right. Yeah, exactly. If you wanted the thing to work that way, and it works that way. That's awesome.
Did. Yeah.
For Reign of Dracula, it's on Kickstarter right now, so people should go and check it out. I'll put a link down in the description. Mm-hmm. Do you want to give a rundown of what your tiers are?
Yeah. So we've got a lot of very, very unique tiers. One of the things when Jerry Carita from Thorny Comics came to me wanting to do a Kickstarter, I said, well, we got to have 2 things. There's got to be a reason for people to back it, and it's got to be affordable and accessible. Reign of Dracula will come out in comic book stores everywhere in 2024. My books are solicited through Diamond. They're with Simon & Schuster. So it will release in comic book stores. Comic book stores will get 24-page full-color issues, 6 consecutive issues monthly. Kickstarter backers will get 48-page jumbo-sized issues in black and white ink wash. These versions will never be reproduced in any format ever. We're only going to print the exact number that we sell of each one. So these Reign of Dracula Kickstarter editions, if you're a collector, and especially if the Cult of Dracula movie takes off the way that we believe it will, yeah, these are collector's issues. These are the ones you want to buy, because some of the covers, there might be 10 made. Because we've got a lot of different covers. I worked with a lot of cover artists. I wanted to give them a chance to be part of this, and thankfully they wanted to work with me again. So I got some crazy cool covers. My favorite tier that we have is the catch-up tier. You can get either digitally or hard copy. You can get all 3 volumes. You can get Cult of Dracula, Rise of Dracula, and then Reign of Dracula by backing that tier. So, a lot of really cool things that way. We recently revamped, pun intended there, our Kickstarter campaign, because, when we launched out of the gate, just being perfectly transparent and honest, I think that's why a lot of readers come back to me, because I'm straight with them. Our Kickstarter was struggling. It was not doing well. So we went back to the drawing board and completely revamped it. We went back and did some more of the 3D digital style art that people seem to be wanting today. But I hope what that does is suggests to people that we are listening and we are willing to adapt to what our fan base wants. So, everybody on the creative team is very dedicated to that. And the tiers are remarkably affordable, because I wanted to reach as many people as possible with these. So I wanted to keep the prices low. Our retailer tiers are incredible. Retailers, if you're out there, you can buy these books from us cheaper than you will be able to buy them in Diamond. We're doing up to a 65% discount tier for retailers. So retailers have been a huge supporter of mine. They've gotten me where I am today, and so I wanted to do something to support them and also to get these books in stores. So yeah, I'm very proud of the Kickstarter. I'm hoping that with this revamp that it really takes off and we do, we hit our goal.
Very cool. Yeah, that sounds great. It's a little bit out of order, but something you touched on, which I mentioned in the beginning and totally forgot to bring up again. Cult of Dracula movie.
Yes. So Cult of Dracula was literally optioned before it hit shelves. We advanced sales for Cult of Dracula #1 were very, very high. Reviews, publicity was everywhere, and it caught the attention of a film company. And so it was optioned. And then COVID happened. Awesome. So it got kind of in development hell for a while. Then that company sold it to another development company, production company, who then put it into immediate active development. That's BR Films out of Wilmington, North Carolina. Fantastic company to work with. It's in active development right now with them. But then the SAG-AFTRA strike happened, so everything came to a halt. And now that the strikes have been resolved and things are starting to move forward, it's back. It's returned from the dead. So just like a vampire should. So it is, again, it's an active development. Tony Todd from Candyman is attached. We've had conversations with Jimmy Simpson from Westworld, Sophia Bush from One Tree Hill, folks like Jacob Elordi from Euphoria. They've had conversations with them, and we have letters of interest from some of those people. Others we're not allowed to talk about just yet because negotiations are ongoing. But
for sure,
it's going to be a good film. It's going to shoot with about a $3 million budget, which is low budget for a horror film, but it's also a horror film. Horror is a genre where you can make a movie relatively inexpensively and get a huge return on your investment. So
right.
3 million allows us to do what we need to do, but doesn't allow us to be excessive with it. So, we'll have to be creative and pull out some really clever special effects. The way that I loved them growing up, watching Tom Savini and the absolute magic that he worked with, basically no budget. So
yeah, practical.
Yeah, practical effects. I love practical effects, man.
Absolutely.
I wish we built more sets today.
Yep.
But yeah, it's the film is developing. It's moving down the track. I actually just this morning I signed with the William Pettit Agency, and so more of my books will be marketed for film. There's one sitting on a desk at Lionsgate right now. So, there are big things coming. So again, tying it all back in, here's the Billy Mays. Wait, there's more sales pitch. Backing the Kickstarter. If you're a person who likes to collect comic books because you see investment potential in them, speculate. Now's a good time to be buying these while you still can. Go to your local.
Like it.
Yeah. Go to your local comic book store, pick up Cult of Dracula if you can find it, pick up Rise of Dracula if you can find it, pick up Prometheus in Chains. It's coming out monthly. Issue 4 comes out this month. Pick those up because they you never know which one of those is the one sitting on Lionsgate's desk waiting for approval. So now's the time to get them. Don't wait. This is the big. I also own a comic book store, so I can speak on this. The biggest mistake investors make is they buy the book when they heard about it in a press release.
Yeah.
By the time that's happened, it's too late. You've missed your profit potential.
Absolutely. You
have to get the things before they're in a press release, before the movie's being made.
Yeah.
So go not only my books, but go and mine Kickstarter, man. Find those books out. There's a lot of them that are going to be developed into animated series and movies and TV shows. Kickstarter is really where the film production companies are looking for new things because the Marvel and DC books, they're locked in. Warner Brothers and Disney, they're not gonna license those out to to a smaller film production company. So that's where the company's going, to Kickstarter, to find those unique, innovative books. So go to Kickstarter, back those projects, and maybe you make some money down the line.
And enjoy the books.
Exactly.
In the meantime,
that's a given. You will enjoy the books because there's great creators on there. But then there's also that profit potential in the end.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Rich, I really appreciate making the time to come on. It sounds like everything is going awesome, and you're keeping really busy with multiple titles up in the air. So everyone, check out Reign of Dracula on Kickstarter as soon as you possibly can. And thanks again, Rich. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. The Kickstarter ends on at 6 p.m. on November 28th. So you got about 14 days from the time we're recording this. I don't know when it's going up, but from today, you got about 14 days to back it. And I would really appreciate it if you would.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for having me, man.